So the name of this Afterwork, why Scrum is the solution to your problems. This is, can you confirm if you are also seeing my pointer so I can point to things?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is the, let's say, English version of the Afterwork I did with my colleague Alejandro, first in Seville and then in Madrid. That was last year before, you know, the world went mad. And this is the English version, but that's why his name is there. Today it's just me, but this has been done with him. Okay. So this is the index we will follow today. Small, short introduction, general aspects, the main concepts to understand Scrum, which are the artifacts, roles, and events, and then again short some final thoughts about. Well, that's the theory, but how is this like in real life, which is really important for me. We're going to start. Of course, if you want at any time, at any point, you can interrupt me and ask anything, comments or whatever, okay? I will go on. So what is Scrum? Let's start with a definition, and this is the only thing I'm going to read today from the screen, but it's really important. So according to the Scrum Guide, which is the official resource to go to for information, it's at scrum.org. And it's a very short guide. It's 22, 23 pages long, I think, in this last version. And it's a bit dense to start with. I mean, it's not a very good first point. But if you are seeing this Afterwork and then you see any other video or something, some article about the Scrum, then you can go there and see the whole guide. So according to that guide, Scrum is a framework within which people can address complex adaptive problems while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. Just 2 or 3 things to highlight here. Scrum is a framework. It's not a closed set of rules telling you what to do in each situation. It's more like a guide, a set of principles, okay? With that framework, you can address complex problems. We are not talking here just about software development or even IT. As you may know, there are other agile methodologies, Kanban, Lean, etc., that they don't come from software development as Scrum does. Toyota is the most famous example in the automobile sector. They have been using some other agile methodologies for the last decades. Okay, so you can use this not just for software development, but for any problem that you can, let's say, break into smaller parts and then proceed with that. And the final thing about this definition, what we want with Scrum is to deliver the highest possible value to the customer. That's what we always have in mind. That's our main goal, and everything is focused on that. Just a bit of history. These 2 nice men are the fathers of Scrum, Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. They first talked about Scrum with that word, if memory serves, in a conference about object-oriented programming in 1995. And if you don't know, Scrum is I'm not a lot into sports, but Scrum is the word given to a situation in rugby. You may have seen it, in which many players, not all the team, but many players get together trying to push to players from the other side, trying to win some matters. Scrum, the methodology, is called after that because that's the idea. The whole team pushing in the same direction to accomplish the goals. Funnily enough, in Spanish, that situation in rugby is called melee, which is, I think, a French word, not Spanish. In 1995, as I said, Scrum was coined as a word, but as I said before, it's not the only agile framework used. In fact, this was in the 90s, there were different groups of people doing software, working in IT, and having more or less the same kind of concerns, the same kind of ideas. So in 2001, these 17 people here met at some place in Utah, I think. And they came up with this, which is called the Agile Manifesto. What they are doing, I'm not going to read it, but this is the most important thing. And what they say here is something like, we are doing everything wrong. We are focusing over having strong, robust processes and tools, and we should be focusing on the individuals we work with, the teams, the customer, and the interactions with them. Again, we produce a lot of documentation. Maybe some of it is useful. Probably a lot of it is not. It just comes in the contract, so we do it. But working software is what the customer wants, is what they really need. So we should be, again, focusing on that. Third point, again, we don't need, or we shouldn't be focusing in a really big contract. So if something happens along the way, we refer to this obscure point in page 300, which says that we weren't going to do that. We should be focusing on collaborating with everyone, especially with the customer, which is the one we want to make happy with our product. And finally, instead of following a plan, doing a really big analysis and then saying, this is what we have signed, this is what we will do. Instead of that, things will happen, we all know that. Changes may appear along the way, so we need to be able to respond to that. What is great for me, why I really like this manifesto is because these 17 people didn't get together to discuss how we do to work less, to earn more money, something like that. They seem to have been concerned about, guys, we are doing a lot of work, weeks, months working on products that then at the end we deliver, we get paid, but we see that it's not useful. You will have seen probably, as I have seen, working in some product for months, and then if you have the opportunity to talk to that customer months later, a year later, they will tell you that, yes, you delivered 25 features, we use 3 of them because are the ones we really need, the other ones not so much, or even it's still in the box and it's not being used. They were worried about that. They wanted to, given we go to work every day, we want to do something that is useful for our customers and that makes them happy. That's the idea behind this manifesto and behind all the agile methodologies, and I like that very much. These are the 3 Scrum pillars are called: inspection, adaptation, and transparency. What Scrum does, and it does really well, is it gives you a lot of opportunities to think and to discover what are you doing wrong and what are you doing well, and to try to improve the things you do well and to try to change the things you do wrong. So there are lots of opportunities for inspection, and with that inspection, lots of opportunities for adaptation. You adapt along the course of the process. You don't wait months to see what you were doing wrong. For that, transparency is needed. So you will see that the artifacts, the events we are going to discuss in some minutes, are all aimed to help with this. I mean, the title, the name for this Afterwork is not really true. I'm sorry. I just put that name so you join the Afterwork. I hope you are not right now getting off the Google Meet. But no, just half kidding. Scrum is not the solution to your problems, but Scrum is very good at taking your real problems, putting them in front of your face and doing that as soon as possible. So it's a really, really good first step for you to solve the real problems that you are going to have on a daily basis in real projects. These three concepts, inspection, adaptation, transparency, bring a lot of good points, a lot of advantages to Scrum and to any Agile methodology. In the typical classical waterfall development, we sign the contract over here, and then there is a long time in which we focus on documentation, we focus on analysis, we focus on coding. By the end of this long period, we deliver the whole software. What happens here? First of all this time, it's a leap of faith from our customers. They have to trust that we are doing the right thing. They will not see if it's the right thing for them or not until this point. And at this point, if it's not the right thing, it's more difficult to fix. Whereas in Agile development, we are delivering value to the customer as soon as here. Here, the customer can actually see some working software. We do our first delivery really, really soon. It's a small thing. It doesn't do a lot of features, but the customer can start testing it, and the customer can start trusting that we are doing what they are telling that they need for their company. And after that, we never stop delivering things until we end with the whole product. This means too that here and here, the customer is also testing what we are delivering. So the risk of this last product being not what they really need is much lower here, because they have been seeing things, and it's like if they are doing a painting for you. If you are seeing the painting every 2 hours, that's a better idea that you have, instead of just seeing the whole picture and say, that's not really what I want. So this is one of the main advantages from Agile development, from Scrum and Kanban, Lean, etc. This is actually what we are going to see now, what you need to understand Scrum. We have three concepts: the roles involved, the artifacts we are going to use, and the events we are going to celebrate, we're going to hold. And that's it. It's really simple, as you will see, to understand. So perfect, right? I mean, we have a methodology that is simple to understand, not many concepts, gives you advantages, all perfect. It's not all perfect, of course. What is the bad point about Scrum is that, as many things in life, as chess, that's a good example, it's really simple to understand the rules behind it. In chess, it's really simple to understand how each of the pieces can move or cannot move. And then you say, okay, I know I can play chess. Yeah, you know how to move the pieces, but mastering it is a very different beast. So it's the same in Scrum. The rules are simple, the artifacts, roles, and events, and that's it. But then mastering it in real projects with real customers, that's different. I have two official certifications in Scrum, Scrum Master and Professional Product Owner. It was interesting to do. I learned things, but I consider myself that almost nothing compared to the real experience for years, because that's when you really learn working with real people, with a real team, and with real customers. Okay, so I really hope you like Scrum from today on, and I really hope you learn more, and that you are able to use it in real life, because that's when you actually learn a lot. That's the introduction. So we can now start with the next point. If you don't have any question, remember, you don't have to wait. You can interrupt me at any point. Nothing. Okay. So artifacts, roles, and events. There is no perfect order to explain this. As soon as I start talking about artifacts, I will talk a bit about the other two, but I think this order more like works with exception. Okay, these are the artifacts we are going to see. Product backlog, sprint backlog, increment. These are the official Scrum artifacts. There are other two ones that we are going to just mention because they are really useful, although they don't come in the Scrum guide. So as I say, to start talking about artifacts, I'm going to first talk about one of the events, which is the sprint, because a sprint is the core, is the heart of everything that happens in Scrum. A sprint is a period of time. One sprint can be from 1 week to 4 weeks long, okay? And everything happens within one sprint. So when you start working on your product, you start on the first day of sprint 1. And as a team, you choose if you're going to have 1, 2, 3, or 4 weeks for your sprints. You should stick to that time. Then we'll talk about that later. So let's say you choose 2 weeks sprints. You start with day 1 from sprint 1, and then you do the 2 weeks for the sprint, and you are now in the last day of sprint 1. Next day is the first day of sprint 2. There's no dead or empty days in the middle. Okay, it's said that it's not a bad idea to start if you are a team new to Scrum. You are not mature in this framework. It's a good idea to start with long sprints. I've never worked with 4-week sprints. I've never worked with 1-week sprints. Yes, with 2 and 3. It's a good idea, I think, to start with 3 or 4 for the first project or projects in Scrum. It's also said that as your confidence grow as a team, the idea is to start doing sprints that are shorter, because the speed is and the demands of shorter sprints is very good for the projects, for the products. That's it. That's, as I say, if you now have the confidence to do that. I've never worked with 1-week sprints. They say, I don't know if it's an urban legend, they say that big companies as Google and such in their internal developments work with 1-week sprints. That's for really huge projects, I will say. That's for very mature Scrum or Agile teams, and that's in a very demanding environment in which you need to put things into production constantly. You can't really wait 2 weeks for have things into production. That said, let's go into the artifacts. First thing is the product backlog. When the customer comes to us as a company, they have a set of requirements. Those requirements are the starting point for the product backlog. The product backlog is a list of items that are very usually user stories. They're called like that, but you can call it anything you want. The product backlog is a list of items that are ordered. So you take all the requirements from the customer and you break that into smaller pieces that you can handle with more ease. And you order them because the team is going to start from the top. This is what the customer wants to see first, because it's what will give them more value than what comes after that. This is something done by the product owner. It's a role that we will see later. Right now, you just need to know that the requirements go into the product backlog, which is another definition of the product backlog is everything that is left until we finish and complete this project. So the product backlog will be going down. You will have less and less items in the product backlog as you progress doing things in your sprints. you will see that these items, these posits, have red letters. This is because you need to know at least a rough estimate of how big these cards are, how big these items are. They don't need to be all the same size. So it's useful for that to have what they call the t-shirt sizes. So you have a small, medium, large, and extra large. This means that the first two ones are more or less the same size, more or less the same complexity. Doing the first and doing the second should take the team more or less the same amount of time, the same complexity. Whereas this one, the third, medium, this means this is bigger than the first two. Okay, this is just a rough estimate, so you start having some idea of the complexity, the size of your product backlog. That's the first artifact. And then, as I say, everything happens within one sprint. So for each sprint, the team takes the top 3, top 5, top 10, the top items from the product backlog. And basing the decision in these sizes, they say, okay, we think for one sprint, we are going to be able to complete these 4 items. This is the sprint backlog, which is the portion of the product backlog that you think, that the team thinks they are going to try to accomplish in one sprint. If this is not done, if the 4th one is not done, then no one dies because of that. This is an estimation, and when you start, your estimations are not going to be good. You think you are going to do this, you may end up doing half of it or twice this thing. If you are in the middle of a sprint and you have, as a team, completed all the sprint backlog, no problem. You have the product backlog order, so you start taking things from the product backlog into the sprint. If you just complete 3 items in the sprint, the 4th one is the most priority item for the next sprint, for the second sprint or whatever. Okay, that's done at the beginning of each sprint. Now that we have what we are going to try to accomplish in this sprint, the team again breaks this into tasks. These tasks are the ones that actually are going to be taken by the developers and then worked on until they are done. So, for instance, in this example, the user login for this application has been broken into 6 tasks. If there are no dependencies or if there is no logical order, and you have 6 developers, they can work on 6 tasks at the same time. There is no problem. If it makes sense to wait for the 6th one until all the first 5 are done and are complete, well, if it's that what you think you should do, you can do it. The only thing you need to know is that you should be working as a team on the first user story until it is completed, and then go to the second one. It makes no sense if you have 4 developers to start with 1 task from each of these user stories, because you may end up at the end of the sprint having almost completed the first user story, almost completed the second one, the third and the fourth, but you have nothing. You don't have any user story completed, so you have nothing to show the customer. That's the worst thing that can happen on a normal sprint. So you should concentrate on not starting a lot of things, but finishing a lot of things. Unless you will always find exceptions, unless you can't really work on more than 1 task at the same time, which sometimes happen. Okay. Now that's the product backlog, that's the sprint backlog. You repeat this sprint after sprint until the product backlog is done, and then you have completed the project. But this is just a first draft of the process, because for the estimates, as I said, the t-shirt sizes are a good first thing to use, but you need to fine-tune that. You need to go into a deeper level of size. For that, you have the user story points. So yes, you have item user story that you think it's roughly an M or an L, but we need to know exactly how many user story points do you think. User story points is not the same as hours, it's not the same as days, but it's related to that. It's related, it reflects the size, but also the complexity. If you have a user story that you know that once you know how to do it, it's going to be 2 hours, but you really don't know how to do that task, that adds a lot of uncertainty. So that needs to be reflected into the user story points. That should be probably a big user story because you actually don't know how much you are going to take. So what do you do for these estimations, for the user story points? At the beginning of the first sprint, you take the first user story. No, you don't take the first one. You take the sprint backlog. You have there 4, 5, 10 user stories, and then you choose one of them, which is not the smaller one, is not the biggest one, is something in the middle, and then you choose a number for it. It should be one of the middle numbers, probably a 5, 3, 5, 8, just because it's not very big, it's not very small. It's a bit random, this. You don't have to choose a 5. It's just a number. So you can compare all the rest of user stories to that one. So whenever you need to estimate the next user story and the next one, you say, okay, the sample one we chose, it's a 5. Compared to that one, is this bigger? Is it smaller? It's more or less the same. And you think of a number. And as a team, you should, every one each of the team then says, okay, I think this story is a 3. Another one says, I think it's a 1. I think it's an 8. And then you have to agree on one number. The whole team, by the end of this conversation, needs to say, okay, we are going to give this user story 5 user story points or 8 or whatever. To help a bit with this, which is sometimes easy, sometimes not so easy, we don't have all the numbers. So usually you don't have the possibility of saying 1 story point, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We use this, which is the Fibonacci order, Fibonacci set. You know, it's each number is the result of adding the previous 2. So 1 plus 2, 3, 2 plus 3, 5, whatever. You don't usually have more than 13 or 21, because that means the user story is too big. If you have one user story that the team thinks is going to be 21, that's a sign that you probably need to break it into 2 or 3 user stories. It depends on the duration of your sprint. In 4 weeks, you can fit longer user stories than in 2 weeks. In fact, here, user stories. How do you know if you have broken the requirements into a small enough chunks, user stories? It is said that, well, the definition is that one user story, one item, is something that can be accomplished in one sprint. If you think that one developer, you may have 5 developers, but they are going to be working on different things. If you think that one developer cannot complete one user story in one sprint, that means you have to break it into 2 or 3, whatever. In fact, it's said that it's good practice not to have user stories that take more than 60% of the duration of the sprint. So, for instance, if you have 2 weeks sprints, if you think a user story, you're going to take for it more than 6 days for a developer, you should break it. Okay, that's useful along with these numbers, the user story points, to know if you are having the correct size for the user stories or not. If at some point you, as a team member, you find you are talking about user story, you really don't know how complex it's going to be. For instance, if it's about some really difficult, hard features or some component you have never worked with, you have no idea, it's a good idea to show, to put a question mark or to show this. These user story points, by the way, you can put them on a paper and show it. You also have these, which are physical cards that you can buy. In fact, this is the model I use. Or there are also now mobile applications. They're usually called Scrum Poker. So you choose your number in your application, and then you show it to the rest of the team, and you start the discussion. As I say, the question mark is useful. It's better if you have no idea how complex this is going to be. It's better to say that than say a random number, say, okay, 8 or whatever, because this is more useful for the conversation. Also, there is actually a card with this. This means I really need a break. I can no longer estimate user stories, so let's have a coffee, 10 minutes, and we will come back after that. Okay. Those are the estimations for the user story when you put them into the sprint backlog. When do you need this? You need this in order for you to have the sprint backlog, you need to have the estimations. So these user story points can be decided either before you have the sprint backlog or just at the start of this process that we will see later how this is called. But as a team, you know how many user story you can take because you add the user story points. That, as I say, the first sprint is going to be a bit random maybe, but as soon as you start working on sprint 2, 3, you will see that the user story points that the team accomplish for each sprint tends to be more or less the same. So you actually more or less you do 50 user story points for each sprint. So you start to become really good at knowing how many stories from the product backlog you should choose for the next sprint, based, as I say, on these points. That's a sprint backlog. That's product backlog. Third and last official artifact in Scrum is the increment. The increment or product increment is the amount of working software that you deliver by the end of each sprint. Remember, everything happens within a sprint. So you started with a sprint backlog. You thought you were going to be able to complete 4 user stories. Let's say you did exactly that. Those 4 user stories are 4 new features that you can right now add to the product. That's this green box. So in the first sprint, you deliver something, product increment. Second sprint, you deliver something else, and such. As I said before, when I explained the advantages, you are always continually delivering something. And if you take all the product increments you have done so far, that's the application you have so far. So everything that you deliver every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, you deliver that to the customer, and they can start using whatever it is, and they can start giving you feedback. By the end of that sprint, which is a really good thing to have the feedback from the customer to see if you are doing good or if you have to change anything. By the way, if the customer tells you they want to change anything, or if they come up with a new idea they didn't have in the initial requirements, no problem. It's a new requirement. It's a new user story or 4 new user stories. They go to the product backlog, and it is prioritized. It's more at the top or at the bottom, depending on priority as everything else. So another advantage for the customer, they can change their minds according to what they are seeing in the increments at any point. Those are the official artifacts, as I say, but let's see other 2 that are really useful. You will see this in your projects or in other teams' projects. The board or the Scrum board. This is a graphical representation of how is actually the sprint going. Are we doing good? Have we completed a lot of things? No. This can be a physical board in which you put the lines and have physical posits, or it can be virtual. It can be done in actually almost any tool that you can imagine. Jira has this out of the box. Redmine. I've used Trello. You can use, I don't know, an Excel sheet if you want to have this. What you really need is to have just columns and rows. So in this first column, you have the user stories that you have chosen for your sprint. That's it. You have here the sprint backlog, of course, as always, ordered by priority. First one on the top. Here in the to-do column, you put the tasks. Remember, you break these stories into small tasks. And at the beginning of the sprint, on day one, you have all the post-its in this column. Everything is something the team has to do. And when at that point, one developer starts something, they say, okay, I'm going to take this task. What should they do? They take this post-it and they physically or virtually, they move it to in progress. So this means that this task is being done by someone. It's good practice to have the name of that someone written here. So if you as a product owner, as a company stakeholder, whatever, as a customer, if you want to know how this is doing, you know who is doing what. It's at first glance if you have the name on the cards. When you as a developer think that this task is completed, you put it into done and you take the next one from the same user story or the next one, the next user story, if this is already done or you have everything from the first user story in progress. You go on moving things until everything is done, and then what is done is what is going to be your increment. Whatever is here is what you will present to the customer. As I say, if by you have not reached still the end of the sprint, but everything in the sprint backlog is done, no problem. You add a new row, which is the first thing in the product backlog, and you go on doing more user stories. The other artifact I want to just mention is the abandon chart, which is also, again, this is for transparency. So you can see, okay, how is our speed in this sprint? Are we doing well or not? Let's say you have 5 days in this sprint, 1 week, and you have 80 user story points by the start of the sprint, which is the amount of the user story points. I don't know if I said 80 user story. It's 80 user story points. The amount of user story points that you have chosen for the sprint backlog. This red line is how this number should be progressing. You are completing things, so each day it passes, you should need to complete less story points. If you are under that line, you should update this on a daily basis. If you are under this, you are having a good velocity. If you are above it, it means by this point you have still more user story points left than you should. This is very optimistic, but you may end here, which means you haven't completed all the user story points. This is just a graphic representation of the speed in one given sprint. It's a good graphical representation. It's useful for a team to see how they are doing and to compare sprints to see if, for some reason, in this sprint, you have any specific problems that is stopping you. That's it about the artifacts. So we are going now to start with the roles. Again, drink some water. Any question or comments? Okay. Good. Let's go on then with the roles. Just 3 roles in Scrum. The product owner, the development team, the Scrum Master. I've already mentioned, of course, some of them. Here you will see development team. If you go to the screen guide, there is something similar but different, which is the Scrum team. The Scrum team is everything that is in this picture, okay? The Scrum team is the development team plus product owner plus a Scrum Master, okay? Not to be confused with that. Let's see each of them, what are their responsibilities. Product owner, it's easy to understand given the name. It's the responsible for the product backlog. The product owner is the one that takes the requirements from the customer and then breaks that into user stories. He or she is the one who writes the user stories, have them updated if necessary, explain what each user story is about to the team, and at that point or at any point that the team needs to clarify anything, that they have any doubt, he's the one to go to. He's also like the external connection, the external representation of the whole Scrum team. So if stakeholders, by stakeholders we mean anyone involved in the process that is not part of the Scrum team, that is customers, the company CEO, other departments from the company, etc. If anyone needs to know anything about how this is going, if the development team needs some specific thing for other department, the product owner is there for helping the team with that. One very important thing that I found in my personal experience: for one product, for one project, you need one product owner, and just one. If you have more than one, that's probably going to lead to confusion. If the team has not a clear idea of when they have some doubt, like should I take this user story or this one, which has the more priority? If they don't know if they have to go to the person who wrote the user story or the person who actually knows, which can be someone from the development team, the person who actually knows how things work in the backend. If there is some confusion like that, as I say, that's going to be very confusing, or it will lead to tears. Anyone apart from the product owner can touch the product backlog. You shouldn't allow anyone from the company or the customer, even if they have access to the actual product backlog, you shouldn't allow anyone to put something into it to change priorities or whatever. The product owner is the only person that can do that. If someone needs to do that, if the customer comes with a new urgent requirement, it's totally okay. They just need to talk to the product owner, and this person is the one who actually updates the product backlog. Okay, that's the product owner. Development team. They are the ones who choose how the sprint backlog is going to be. I mean, if the product backlog is composed by 100 user story, no one should tell them, okay, and in the next sprint, you have to do 30 of them. We know they're going to be, development teams sometimes have external pressures. The product owner and the Scrum Master should be there to help encapsulating the team and not letting those pressures go inside. In a good Scrum environment, the development team is the one who chooses what is going in each sprint based on the priority given by the product owner. They are also, of course, the ones responsible for doing the increment. The work from the development team is what is going to form the product increment by the end of the sprint. They are also responsible for two things I haven't mentioned yet: definition of ready, definition of done. This can also they can be considered two artifacts. Definition of ready, and this is a very powerful tool for the development team. Definition of ready is the list of things that we as a development team need to see in a user story for us to accept starting work on it. I mean, for instance, as a development team, you can say, my definition of ready is that the user story have clear criteria, clear acceptance criteria. I mean, these 4 points are the ones you have to do, and when these 4 points are done, this user story is done. If it's going to be a front-end user story, we need the prototypes first before we start working on it. So we need the prototypes. That's also another line on the definition of ready. Everything that you can imagine goes into the definition of ready. That's the list of rules. If this user story has something that is failing, has something that it's in the definition, it's part of the definition already, but it's not part of this story. We don't accept it. We are not starting work on this, because if you, as a development team, accept one user story, you are going to be responsible for it and for completing it, and the trouble and the problems are going to come to you, actually. So, as I say, this is a really powerful tool for the development team. They are also responsible for the definition of done, which is, when do we consider a user story is done? When the developer says that I have tested it and all the acceptance criteria is done. Okay. When the QA department sees it and says, okay, no problems with it. Okay. When I don't know, when it's in some environment, when it's merged into some GitHub that we have in pre-production, whatever you can imagine, it goes into the definition of done. The team is again responsible for that. If something fails, if you as a team start a project with a definition of ready and definition of done, and you start saying, okay, we didn't know we will need this thing, and now we see we need it. These are alive artifacts, so you can, if you want, you can, by the end of each sprint, add things, remove things, update things from the definition of ready or definition of done. This is something for your team and for this project. For a different project, same team or a different team, you may need a different definition of ready. Lots of things are going to be the same, especially if you have more experience, because there are things that, for the definition of done, every acceptance criteria needs to be done. That's common sense. But at the start of each project, you choose what is your definition of ready and done for this project. Finally, the development team is self-organized. That means that if on each and every sprint you see that you need to borrow someone from another team, you are not having a self-organized team. You need to add that person to your team, maybe 50% of the time or whatever. But if you need almost on a daily basis or on a sprint basis, if you need someone that is not part of your team is not complete. You should have every skill needed for the project. You should have it in the development team from the very beginning. And what's the number? The Scrum Guide says between 3 and 9 people here. Less than 3, it will be too small. More than 9 is too big to manage. I've never worked with 9, 8, 7 people. I've worked with teams from 3 to 6. It depends on the project. It depends on how independent the user stories are going to be. It depends on can I really work in 6 user stories at the same time or not? Okay, so that's one thing you have to consider when you choose your team. Last role, the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is it's often defined as a servant leader. That means they lead the team by serving everyone else. So it's someone that can perfectly be one of the members from the development team, not the product owner, because one of the roles or one of the responsibilities for the Scrum Master is to make sure that the product owner is not is doing their work right. So they are not pushing the development team to do too many things in one sprint, things like that. So as I say, it can be one person external to the development team or from the development team, but no, not the product owner. And they assist and they facilitate every event, the events we are going to see now. And they are basically people that remove obstacles. If obstacles as simple sometimes as seeing that one developer is always saying every day, my laptop is too slow. Every time I want to measure something, it's 10 minutes, something like that. The Scrum Master can go to whoever in the company and say that if the development team is lost sometimes with the complexity of some sprint, this is the person that actually analyzes and says, okay, you know what's the real problem, that we have chosen, I don't know, some user stories that have a lot of dependencies, and we really need to break them into small user stories or reorganize them. That's the real problem. Is someone who is there to remove obstacles, to analyze and to see what is happening at any point and to help the others. Okay, that's my current role, by the way. That's it about the roles. Everything okay? Any question from anyone? Remember, I can no longer see you, just hear you. So if you have any question or something, please just say it, okay? Okay, the events. These are the 5 Scrum events, plus a 6th one, not official one, that we are going to see. The first one is the sprint, and every other event happened within one sprint, okay? So nothing, not a lot to add about this one. 1 to 4 weeks duration. You shouldn't change this amount of weeks inside a project for a variety of reasons. The team starts to get used to delivering every 3 weeks, so they know what they can accomplish and what not. The metrics, the amount of user story points that they deliver each sprint, if you go to a different duration, that has to be different, of course. Some other reasons, you know, it's not strictly forbidden. If you need to do it, you can do it, but you need to choose wisely by the start of the project, and then you should stick to that duration. And some projects, they may have to be synchronized with others. For instance, if your project is not responsible for some part, let's say some API that you're going to use, some REST services, something like that, you should know when those, in which sprint those other teams are going to deliver that, because you cannot put anything into, or you should not put anything into the sprint backlog if you can do it, but you cannot test it because you don't have that API or something like that. So that's also something that the Scrum Master can help with if you need to synchronize with other with sprints from other teams. What happens? What events happen inside a sprint? First of all, the sprint planning. First thing that should happen in a sprint is the sprint planning. The Scrum Guide says it's 8 hours max for 4 weeks sprints. That means 4 hours max for 2 weeks sprints, and so on. That's a really long time. I never spent 8 hours. I hope you don't spend that much time. This is where the sprint backlog is created. This is in the sprint planning. You have the product backlog, and as a team, you say these are the user stories that go into the sprint backlog. At this point, you need the user story points. So if you don't have them from before, from the product backlog, this is the moment to take the Scrum Poker application or cards or whatever, and start the discussion of the story points. What is the output of this event, this meeting? The user stories in the sprint, that is the sprint backlog, and the Scrum Guide says the sprint goal or sprint goals, which is a short sentence or 2 sentences explaining, more or less summarizing what this sprint is going to be about. For instance, we are going to use all the external APIs that we now know we have ready for us, or we are going to be focusing on the front-end part, something like that. Actually, I've worked lots of times for years without having a sprint goal. I think that the important thing is to have the sprint backlog, and you don't really need to have one sentence, because sometimes you have 8 user stories and 3 of them are front end. One of them is some bug that someone reported, something like that, and it's a bit hard to come up with 1 or 2 sprint goals. My personal opinion, the Scrum Guide says that you need to come up with sprint backlog and sprint goals, so I mention it. Then, after sprint planning, every day you have this event, which, thanks God, is very short. 50 minutes max for the daily Scrum or the daily stand-up meeting. It's called like that because to reinforce the idea that it should be short, usually you do it as a team, you do it standing up, not just going into a meeting room and everyone have their seats and then you start talking and it's an hour. It's not that. 15 minutes in which in more or less 2 minutes each member of the team, you say, okay, so yesterday I was working on this user story, this task, I completed it, so, or I didn't. So when I complete it today, I plan to start working on these other things. And you say if you have any obstacles. For instance, you tell another member of the team that you're going to start some task that you have some doubts and you need to talk about that to that person before you start. 15 minutes, 2 minutes each, just to say what we did, what we are going to do I have any problems to do it, and that's it. It's a good idea to have it more or less first thing in the morning, or at least in the mornings before the day commences. And yeah, it's a good idea to have it at the same time every day, so you start having a routine with that. Why do you do that? To help transparency again, and to do things like update. It's a very good moment to update the chart, the bar down chart we saw earlier, and also the board, the Scrum board. So you see, okay, I have already taken this and I didn't move the POSIT. I'm going to move it now. So everyone can see how it's going. The development team as a whole should be there. Others, product owner, other stakeholders can be there, but always remembering this is an event for the team. Product owner can be there just to see how things are going, or just in case some doubt, some question arises for them or something like that. But this is not about explaining user stories or something like that. It's just about what we are going to do today. That you do that every day, and then you reach the last day of the sprint, where you do the sprint review. The sprint review, 4 hours max, according to the Scrum Guide, for 4 weeks sprint, is where you show what you have done. Very important, you have to do a demo. Just showing a PowerPoint with screenshots from what you have done, that doesn't count. You need to have working software, you need to present it. Usually what you do is a demo. I've seen this and I've done this in many ways. Each member of the team shows what they have done to the product owner, or someone from the team, you can rotate that, someone from the team shows everything to the product owner, or the product owner already knows what has been done, what the increment is, and the product owner is the one doing the demo to the customer. It depends on different specific situations on projects. You can choose any of them, but real working software, the product increment should be working well, and demos should be shown to product owner or customer by the end of the sprint in the sprint review. As a result of that, you will see that yes, that really works. So we can have that user story as done, or no, that now that you are showing it to me, it seemed to work, but I found this, so it needs to stay in the product backlog because it's not completed. So by the end of the sprint review, the product owner updates the product backlog and says, okay, These 4 stories are done. They go out of the product backlog. This stays because there's more work needed. After the sprint review, you have the sprint retrospective. This is a meeting in which you analyze as a team what went well, what went wrong, what can we do about it. It's again another opportunity for inspection and for adaptation. For instance, you may see in the retrospectives things like whenever there is a user story about the connection to a database, always that goes always to the same developer, because he is or she is the only one who knows how to do that. As a team, we have a problem. What happens when that person is not in the team, on holidays, on another teams, another company, whatever. So the retrospective is a good opportunity for you to know what you are doing wrong with your team and with your project, and to put actions to solve that. Actually, it's not enough to talk about that, but the output of the retrospective is a list of actions that you are going to try to implement or to start implementing on the very next sprint. Okay, we have found this about the database connection example. So we are going to put aside 4 hours on the next sprint. So you, the one who knows how to code the database connections, are going to explain each and every one of us how to do it. So from now on, we all can do it. Is there any problem with externally? For instance, pressure with time, a classic. They told us we have to do all this product backlog in 4 sprints, but that's not enough. They should have given us more time. Things that maybe are not in the hands of the team to solve, but they should be told. And then the Scrum Master is the one who, if needed, takes that to the relevant person, to the CEO, to the commercial people, the commercial department, or whoever, to see how can improve this for this project, or if that's impossible, for next projects. Okay. Then you start a new sprint, and same iteration again. Start with the sprint planning and so on. As I said before, there is also another event that is not here, but you may have heard of it, you may have done it, which is the refinement. Refinement is really important. Refinement is everything that has to do with the product backlog getting more detail. It's not an official event in Scrum because it's composed of lots of different situations, actually. The product owner, by their own, at home, writing user stories, that's refinement. The product owner is explaining to the team or some of the team the new user stories that we are going to have in a sprint, that refinement. The product owner going for a coffee to the machine, and then comes a developer and says, hey, product owner, one question about the thing I'm doing right now. In this screen, you want the background green or red? I want it green. Okay, thank you. That's refinement too. So everything can be refinement as soon as you are adding more detail to what needs to be done. That's why there is not a specific event or one day to do this in Scrum officially inside one sprint. That said, you are going to probably have refinement meetings, and you should have. And as a product owner, I usually enjoy them a lot, because it's the moment to work with the whole team and to explain the user stories that we are going to see next, and we see what comes in the next 2-3 weeks. It's an important moment. Okay, that's it about events. Yeah, we are almost reaching the end. Anything from anyone? No? Okay. Okay. Just the last point, which is actually short. Just 2 final thoughts again, based on experience. This is not part of the Scrum guide. This is more or less summary of all the Scrum process. So you have everything or almost everything here, every role, artifact, event, product owner, team, product backlog, sprint backlog. Here it says Sprint Master. I don't know why this is the Scrum Master. Sprint, review, finish at work, which is the increment, retrospective, whatever. Now that we have more or less explained everything, every role, every artifact, every event, where would you think that problems will probably arise? Where do you think that problems come on real projects come from? I'll tell you, everywhere. Okay, as I said, this seems very simple. It's very simple to understand, but when you use it with real people like you, with real customers, in real life, you start having all sorts of problems in all sorts of ways, artifacts, events, etc. That's why it's really good and really important in Scrum to have all those opportunities for inspection and for the team to adapt the work they are doing on a daily basis. If you have 2 weeks for the first sprint, after 2 weeks, you already will have a good idea of the first things that are going well and the first things that are going wrong. So you can start changing things at that point. You don't have to wait until you have delivered the wrong features and everything is lost. Okay, remember, we want to make the customer happy by adding value each sprint. So everything you can see now here in this graphic, everything can go wrong, but Scrum will help you to discover it and to fix it as soon as possible. And just the very last final thought. 1, 2, 3, that means 1, 2, 3 in Spanish. I don't know if you know this. This is the name and this is the logo of a really, really famous Spanish TV show from the 70s, from the 80s, and from the 90s. Why in the name of God am I bringing this here, you may be wondering. As I say, this was a TV show in which it was like a quiz show. 3 pair of people comes and they have some questions, and then they have some physical things to do, and by the end some decisions to make. Whatever. It's a contest that used to be on TV, on Spanish TV, every Friday night. Everyone used to see this. In fact, real true fact. Today, in one program in the Spanish TV, they were talking about this program. That's how important it has been for generations here in Spain. I know it was sold to some other countries, so I don't know if you have actually seen this or a version of it. Okay. Anyway, why am I bringing this here? At the start of each program, every Friday night, you saw the credits, right? Hosted by whoever, lighting done by whoever, music by whoever, and this was a show created by someone named Narciso Ibáñez Serrador, known as Chicho Ibáñez Serrador. He created the show and many other programs, and he was the director. But in those credits, when the final credit was on screen before the program starts, the show starts, what it said here wasn't directed by Narciso Ibáñez Serrador, which is what you would expect. What it said was this. That in Spanish means, and if anything fails, the responsible is. And then you could see his name. And I thought from my childhood, when I was a child in this program, and I still think now that this is a reminder that this person, Chicho, that This is a reminder that he put there every week for him to remember that being the one directing this show doesn't mean that if you tell something, they do it. It's not that. It's that if anything, small or big, if anything fails in some part, in some way, you are at least partially responsible, because maybe you should have given more clear instructions about something. Maybe you should have heard that person that came with a question, but you didn't have time, something like that. I'm bringing this here. I'm finishing with this, because I really feel the key to success with the Scrum is when everyone in the team, in the Scrum team, not just in the Scrum team, but also the stakeholders, when the development team, Scrum Master, Product Owner, the customers, the people in the company, other departments, when everyone feels a bit like this, when everyone feels like in this Scrum situation in rugby, I just talked about, if you feel at least responsible of every good thing that is done in the project, you feel at least partially responsible of the good things, and you also feel partially responsible of whenever something fails, whenever it can be improved, then Scrum is working. The project is going to work. The team is going to work well. And the product will be a good one, and the customer is going to be happy, and we will all be paid, which is something important too. Okay, that's it from my side. So any question, any comment, any feedback, whatever you may have, I'm here for you.
Hello, David.
Yep.
So I have a question. So what if a developer is working on many products at the same time? How do Scrum deal with deadlines? Separate deadlines in different projects.
Okay, yeah. It's not the ideal thing, but it happens. So this is something that you have to take into account when doing the sprint backlog. If you have this person that you know is going to be working on, say, 2 projects, and you are going to be able to have that person 50% of their time, let's say you have 50 points for each sprint, more or less, and 5 developers. If you have one of them that's going to be 50% of the time, you should have something like 45 points for the sprints in which this happens. And also, you need to be very aware, and that's something for the product owner and the Scrum Master. You need to be very aware of any hard deadline for this project or for the other project that person is working on. You need to be aware, okay, if I'm going to have this person 50% of the time, that doesn't mean that I will be able to have this person this Friday, maybe, but from next Monday. So it's something to be considered when you are speaking about the sprint backlog and how many points you can take for the next sprint. Okay, there's also, this is a Scrum for one team, one project. As you probably know, there are all kinds of complications. What was I saying? Scaled Agile, scaled Scrum, a Scrum of Scrums. I swear that's something that is a thing to when you have a company, a whole company with projects that are related to each other sometimes, and they need to be synchronized. So there are events, there are meetings happening, not just in the teams, but outside that to synchronize that. It's something that happens a lot. For instance, where I am now, which is the Servicio Andaluz de Salud, the health service in Andalusia. Lots of different applications that have relationships, and it's a bit of a pain, but it happens.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Thanks for not going off the meeting with the initial technical problems, nor when I said I had lied to you with the name of the Afterwork. I'm really sorry. Okay, that's it. I don't even know what the time is. Yeah.
Thank you, David, for your exposition. This was very good, very careful about Scrum. I would like to ask you, what about documentation inside the projects? Because in the waterfall model, there are a lot of documentation, and your developers are doing a great work, but a lot of hours dedicated to documentation. In this case, it's supposed to be the opposite. But how is that opposite? Or what is the balance between documentation and code in the Scrum model?
Right. For
Thank you.
Yep. For that and for almost everything else, I often refer to the Agile Manifesto and to the principles of Scrum. And the principles said that we should be delivering what? Working software documentation? No, value. So any documentation that adds value is part of our sprint backlog, of our product backlog. One user story can be, for instance, update the user manual for this and this and this. That can be a user story. You don't need to deliver software code for each user story. Okay? You just should do the documentation needed for the project or needed for, because the customer is asking you to produce that documentation because they want to have it. Nothing else, because you have done that all your life. And no, if you don't need it, don't do it.
Okay, thank you, David. Another question that is about preparing a release to deploy. For instance, I think when the development team, the sprint, they are developing, they are programming, yes, they are, but they are programming their own stories and their own task, so they are testing this task. But what about this product to be deployed? Is it necessary to put another task to do a whole testing of all the software? Is recommended, or it's better to delay it to another sprint if this sprint is not going to be to develop the phase?
Okay, again, based on my experience, I don't like user stories that don't include everything. I mean, when I was a product owner, if a user story was about adding a feature, and then you need to reflect that in a small paragraph of the user manual, for instance, I will add as an acceptance criteria, the user manual needs to be updated. And same with testing. If I need this working, I don't like breaking a user story into, we develop this, and then a different user story, we test this, which is something that I see some teams doing. You can do it. I personally don't like it. I think it's best when you, same as with the development team that should be self-organized, you need to have all the skills inside the team. I think you need to have all the tasks inside the user story. So for that, for instance, you can, whenever the team breaks a user story into different tasks, the last one can be, and then the QA department test this, for instance. That's the way I will do it. But I've seen many things. I've seen user stories just with the development, and then the testing goes into the next sprint. But that goes against the principles, because you are saying you are delivering things, a potential product increment that could go into production, and you haven't tested it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So that's something that goes against what I would say.
I've seen that happens because sometimes these sprints, they are not going to be deployed, so development team avoids to test the whole product. So they prepare their sprint with their task that they are tested by unitary testing only, but they are not tested the proper way, the whole product. So they are delayed until a sprint that is supposed to be deployed. That is, in this case, they used to do that.
Yeah.
I work here for Asturias Health Service too. We have a little sprint part with the development, with the product. It's a little thing, but I have very good and bad practices. I'm the project manager, so I'm not entered directly in this team. Of course, I interact with them, but I'm not inside the whole time. But I think it's interesting your point of view. I would like to take notes or to take notes of what you are saying. Thank you, David.
Okay, as I say, for me, testing is one task inside the story. It's okay if you, I mean, if you have done everything in a user story, but you haven't tested it, I consider that user story not done, and it goes to the next sprint. But as you say, I have seen different approaches. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? I know it's Friday afternoon, and I don't want to take your personal life. so just the last, yeah.
For the sprints, who decides the number of weeks?
Yeah, that's something that has to be agreed on by the team, but also people outside the Scrum team. For instance, the customer may tell you, I want to see things every 2 weeks. So you say, yes, sir. And every 2 weeks, you deliver something because they may need to see that. As I say, in my experience, the shorter, the better. But that needs some practice. Before the shorter, the sooner that the customer is going to give you feedback, and that's always a good thing.
Can the number of weeks change? For example, the first time it's 1 week, the second time 2 weeks, maybe not. No,
you shouldn't. That's like saying, okay, I'm going to run 10 minutes every day, but today is going to be 5 minutes, tomorrow 10 minutes, and the other day 2 minutes. It's not good practice.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I was about to say, I guess you have my email if you have any question later on. Also, I don't know if you know Jorge Diaz, another of our colleagues from Madrid, is the people taking Babel into a whole new level of Agile, Scrum, and in general Agile practices. He knows a lot. He's also a very good person to go to if you have any questions. He's more focused at a company level, let's say, whereas I work at a team level. And also the very last thing, I guess Alexandra told me to tell you this. We also have the Kubo methodology. You may have seen it in the internet, which is something you can use for the project management of all kind of projects, agile not agile. Alexandra is the one to go for that in the company, because it's the one in charge of that. Okay, but it's really useful if you are a project manager and you want to follow the practices that in Babel that we follow in Babel. Okay.
David.
Yep.
One question. Jorge Villa, I don't know if is it in the company anymore.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Then I am the person to go to. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
No, okay, but anyway, thank you. Didn't know that.
Welcome.
Anyway, as I say, you have my email. You can ask me anything you want if you have any doubt. If you are actually going to use Scrum, any specific question, we can chat whenever you want.
Thank
Whatever.
you. Information sounds so perfect in the theory, but in the practice is a little different.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the team, on the project. I think it depends on the client.
Yeah. I always, I heard this a lot of years ago. They say there's something that happens in IT that we always say this would be a really good application if it weren't for all those damn users, right? So Scrum is here to help us with us. Let's do what they want.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, everyone, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Pleasure.
Okay. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Happy
lot.
weekend.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
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 Good weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Same.
Too.